The hall was silent. Hundreds of people had gathered, yet all you could hear was the soft hum of cameras waiting to capture something unforgettable. The lights shone bright, but they were not brighter than the man standing on stage. Keanu Reeves walked with the same calm energy that had followed him for decades. He was not loud, he was not arrogant, he was simply himself. And that made people respect him more than any words could. In the front row, Sandra Bullock sat quietly. She had known Keanu for years, but in this moment she was not an actress, not a star, not even a friend in the usual sense. She was someone holding a secret close to her heart, a secret built on memories, struggles, and moments that never reached the public eye. The world thought they knew everything about them, but the truth was only between two people. And tonight, Sandra carried the weight of that truth in just 3 words. The evening had begun as a tribute to resilience and kindness. Stories of strength were shared, tales of people rising again after falling, moments where humility became more powerful than fame. Keanu listened as others spoke. He nodded, his eyes gentle, his smile small but meaningful. His silence had always been his strength. When others shouted for attention, he whispered through actions. And when others rushed, he waited. That patience had made him different, and the crowd could feel it. But the night was building towards something unexpected. As the program moved forward, the host invited Sandra to share her words. No one knew what she would say. Some expected a simple thank you. Others thought she might talk about old films and funny stories. Instead, she walked to the stage with a seriousness that even the cameras could not ignore. Her steps were slow, her face calm, but inside her chest her heart raced. Sandra reached the microphone. Her eyes moved toward Keanu, and in that single glance the audience felt a tension they could not explain. It was not romance in the simple sense, it was deeper. It was the kind of bond that comes from years of respect, quiet understanding, and kindness shared in silence. She took a breath, and the hall grew stiller than ever before. "I need to say this," Sandra began softly, "because sometimes life gives you moments, and if you don't take them, they are gone forever." The crowd leaned forward. Her voice carried not the tone of a performer but the weight of someone who had lived through both joy and pain. And then, as if the world itself had slowed, she whispered 3 words. They were not loud. They were not shouted. But they cut through the air sharper than any speech before them. Keanu's head lifted. His expression shifted just slightly. It was a reaction that no script could prepare for. The cameras clicked, people gasped, and in that small silence the world seemed to change. The 3 words Sandra spoke were private, almost too intimate for the stage, yet they held a message far greater than just 2 people. They spoke of kindness, of loss, of the resilience it takes to carry pain and still smile. The reaction shocked millions. Not because Keanu broke into tears, not because he gave a dramatic answer, but because his response was raw, human, and deeply humble. His eyes glistened, his lips curved into the smallest smile, and for a brief second it seemed as if the hall itself breathed with him. It was a moment where power did not belong to fame or money, but to truth. People watching at home felt it too. Across the world, screens lit up with Keanu's quiet reaction. Social media began to buzz, but no caption could truly explain the feeling. What had just happened was not entertainment. It was something real, something human, and in a time when noise often drowns out meaning, this silence spoke louder than anything else. Yet behind the reaction lay a story that few knew. Those 3 words Sandra whispered carried years of struggle, a history of choices made in private, and lessons that could change how people saw not only them, but themselves. The journey to this moment was long, filled with twists, pain, resilience, and acts of kindness that had gone unseen. And now the world was about to discover it piece by piece. The night did not end with applause alone. Whispers filled the hall. Questions began to rise, and curiosity spread like fire. People wanted to know more. What were those words? Why did they matter, and why did Keanu respond in such a way? But the truth would not be given all at once. It would unfold slowly, like a story meant not only to entertain, but to inspire. Because sometimes a whisper is more powerful than a shout. Sometimes 3 words can hold a lifetime of meaning. And sometimes one reaction can change how millions see the world. And this was only the beginning. The whispers did not stop after the event ended. People left the hall talking in low voices, some with confused faces, some with eyes full of emotion. No one knew exactly what Sandra had whispered, but everyone knew it was powerful. It was not just the words that mattered. It was how Keanu reacted. His reaction carried honesty that could not be faked, and that was what kept millions of hearts restless through the night. Outside, cameras flashed as Sandra and Keanu walked past reporters. Questions flew in every direction. What did she say? Why did you react like that? But Keanu kept his calm. His silence became an answer in itself. He smiled softly, thanked everyone, and guided Sandra into the car. His way of handling pressure showed why people trusted him more than many others in Hollywood. He never used noise to protect himself. He used humility. Inside the car, there was a pause between them. The air felt heavy but not uncomfortable. Sandra finally broke the silence. "I should not have done it on stage," she whispered, her eyes looking down. But Keanu shook his head slowly. "You needed to. And you did." His voice carried no anger, no judgment, only quiet respect. And for Sandra, that respect meant more than applause from any audience. The ride continued in silence, but both of them were replaying the moment in their minds. For Sandra, those 3 words had lived inside her heart for years. She had hidden them, thinking the world would never understand. But standing in front of Keanu that night, she felt the weight of time. Life was short. Words left unsaid often became regrets, and she did not want regrets anymore. For Keanu, the words reminded him of something deeper. Memories of times when both of them had faced storms the world never knew about. Her whisper had unlocked a part of his heart that he had kept locked for too long. Meanwhile, the internet had exploded. Millions of people were sharing clips of Keanu's reaction. Some tried to read lips, others guessed the words. Theories spread like fire. Some said it was love, others said it was forgiveness. But what no one understood was that the truth was much heavier, much more human. It was not about romance alone. It was about survival, resilience, and the unbreakable kindness that had kept them both standing when life tried to break them. As days passed, the media storm grew stronger. Headlines screamed about the mystery. Fans argued endlessly online. Yet, Keanu remained silent. Sandra, too, did not reveal anything. Instead, both of them disappeared from the public eye for a few days. It was not to escape, but to breathe. Because behind those 3 words lay a story that deserved to be told with care, not thrown into the chaos of gossip. In a quiet house away from the city, they sat together. The room was filled with old photographs, memories of films, laughter, and the kind of friendship that fame could not destroy. Sandra looked at one picture and sighed. "They see us as stars," she said softly. "But they don't know how many nights we have cried in silence." Keanu nodded. "Maybe now is the time they should know," he replied, his eyes calm but firm. And so, for the first time, Sandra began to speak the truth out loud. She told Keanu why she chose that moment, why she whispered those 3 words, and how those words carried the weight of something she had never said to anyone else. Her voice trembled as she shared the past, and Keanu listened just as he always had. He did not interrupt, he did not rush. His silence became her strength. In that silence, Sandra felt safe. But as the night went on, both of them realized something. The story was no longer just about them. It was about everyone who had ever held back their feelings, everyone who had carried invisible battles, everyone who had been afraid to speak truth. The reaction of millions showed that people were ready to hear it. They were ready to understand that kindness and respect could be more powerful than fame or power. Yet, sharing the truth would not be easy. It meant opening wounds, facing criticism, and being vulnerable in front of the entire world. Sandra looked at Keanu with doubt in her eyes. "Are you sure we should?" she asked. He placed his hand gently on hers and whispered, "Truth never destroys, Sandra. It only heals. His words gave her the courage she had been missing. The next step was clear. They would not let gossip control the narrative. They would share their story themselves. Not for attention, not for publicity, but to inspire. Because if 3 words could shake the world, then the story behind them could change it. As dawn broke, a new light entered their lives. Sandra's whisper had begun something neither of them had planned, but both of them knew it was meant to be. What came next would test their strength, their humility, and their ability to stay true in front of the world. But together they were ready, and the journey had only just begun. The silence of the early morning wrapped around them like a blanket. Outside, the world was waking up, but inside the quiet house, Keanu and Sandra sat with cups of coffee untouched on the table. Their eyes were heavy with thoughts, their hearts still carrying the weight of the night before. Sandra traced her finger on the edge of her cup, not speaking. Keanu waited. He had learned long ago that silence often revealed more than rushed words. Finally, Sandra broke the stillness. "Those 3 words," she whispered, "they are not simple. They come from pain I have carried for years." Her eyes glistened with unshed tears. Keanu leaned forward, his calm presence inviting her to continue. "When I said them on stage, I was not just speaking to you. I was speaking to myself, too. I was telling myself it's time to stop hiding, it's time to heal." Keanu nodded slowly. He understood more than anyone how heavy hidden pain could be. He had lived through grief, loss, and loneliness that the public never fully knew. The world admired his strength, but they did not see the nights when his soul felt broken. In Sandra's words, he heard echoes of his own journey. "Pain doesn't disappear," he said gently, "but when you share it, it becomes lighter." As the sun climbed higher, they began to talk about the past. Sandra spoke about the pressure she had faced, the times she had been judged harshly, the mistakes she carried in silence. There were moments when she had almost given up, moments when kindness from a single person kept her standing. And one of those people had always been Keanu. She looked into his eyes and whispered, "You never knew how much your quiet support saved me." Keanu's lips curved into a small smile. "You saved me too," he replied softly. "More than you realize." Those words surprised her, and for a moment she forgot her pain. She realized that their bond was not built on success or fame, but on invisible threads of kindness, respect, and resilience. Every time life pushed one of them down, the other was there, sometimes without even speaking, just standing close enough to remind them they were not alone. Meanwhile, outside their quiet refuge, the world continued to burn with curiosity. News outlets replayed the clip of Sandra whispering and Keanu's reaction. Fans debated endlessly online. Some believed the words were a declaration of love. Others thought it was an apology, and some even called it a secret message. The mystery grew bigger with every passing hour. What no one knew was that the truth was more powerful than any rumor. It was not a game for attention. It was a lesson waiting to be shared, but the pressure was mounting. Their phones buzzed with calls from agents, producers, and friends. "You have to tell the world," one said. "This is your moment," another insisted. But both Sandra and Keanu refused to rush. They knew that truth could not be served like gossip. It had to be revealed with care, or else its meaning would be lost. "We don't owe them noise," Keanu said calmly. "We owe them honesty." That evening, they sat together again, this time with a notebook between them. Sandra opened the first page and wrote, "The story behind 3 words." She looked at Keanu. "If we are going to share it, we must start from the beginning," she said. Keanu agreed. Yes, not the glamorous beginning, but the real one. So they began to trace back their journeys, stories of childhood, struggles, heartbreak, mistakes, and the quiet victories that shaped who they had become. For Sandra, it was about admitting the times she had felt weak, the times she had almost lost faith in herself, and how those moments had made her stronger in the end. For Keanu, it was about revealing the grief he carried from losing loved ones and how he learned to survive not with anger, but with compassion. Their stories were not about fame. They were about being human, and that was what made them powerful. As the night stretched on, they realized something important. Their story was no longer just theirs. It belonged to everyone who had ever struggled in silence. It belonged to everyone who had whispered words they thought no one would hear. It belonged to the millions of people searching for hope in a world that often felt too heavy. The thought gave them courage. "Maybe this is why it happened," Sandra said. "Maybe it was never about us alone." Keanu nodded, his eyes reflecting the quiet fire of determination. "Then let's give them what they need," he said. But even as they planned to share their truth, a storm was already building outside. The media was preparing to spin its own version of the story. Gossip sites were digging into their pasts, ready to twist every detail. It would not be easy to stand against it. Yet, deep inside, both Sandra and Keanu knew they were ready. They had faced storms before, but this time they would not hide. They would face it together, with kindness as their shield, because sometimes the most powerful act is not to shout louder than the world, but to whisper the truth and let it echo in hearts forever. And soon, that whisper would shake the world once again. The storm outside their quiet home was getting louder every hour. News stations replayed the clip again and again, slowing down every frame to catch Sandra's lips, searching for clues. Millions of fans became detectives, writing endless theories online. Some called it the most powerful moment in Hollywood history. Others dismissed it as a staged scene. But the truth was far beyond entertainment. It was rooted in pain, kindness, and a bond that had survived in silence for years. Keanu scrolled through his phone briefly, reading comments from people across the world. Strangers were saying, "Those 3 words gave me hope," and others confessed, "I cried watching his reaction." He set the phone down and whispered to Sandra. "They already feel the weight of it, even without knowing the story." Sandra nodded slowly. "That means they are ready," she said. "But the question is, are we ready?" They knew the risk. Opening their hearts meant inviting judgment. People would twist their story. Some would mock it, and others would try to profit from it. But Keanu's calm voice broke through her doubts. "Truth is stronger than judgment," he said gently. "If even one person feels less alone because of what we share, then it's worth it." Sandra looked into his eyes and saw the strength that had carried him through so many storms. In that moment, her fear began to soften. Later that evening, they received a call from a trusted journalist, someone who had known them for years. "You don't have to tell me everything," she said, "but the world needs to hear your voices, not the noise of others." The sincerity in her tone touched them both. After the call ended, Sandra whispered, "Maybe this is the way. Not through tabloids, not through rumors, but through our own words." Together, they decided to record their truth, not as a performance, but as a conversation. No scripts, no rehearsals, just honesty. Sandra set up a simple camera in the living room, the same room filled with photographs and memories. Keanu adjusted the chair, sat down calmly, and took a deep breath. Sandra sat beside him, her hand resting lightly on the table. The red light of the camera blinked on, and the journey began. "The world has been asking what those 3 words meant." Sandra started softly, her eyes steady. "And I want to explain, not for attention, but because sometimes words carry more than we can hold alone." She paused, her voice trembling slightly, but Keanu's quiet presence gave her strength. "The words I whispered were not about fame, not about romance, not about headlines. They were about survival." Keanu listened, his eyes reflecting both pain and pride. Sandra continued, her voice steadying as she spoke. "I whispered you saved me." Her eyes filled with tears as she finally revealed it. "Because many years ago, when my world was falling apart, when I was drowning in loneliness and doubt, Keanu stood beside me. Not loudly, not with speeches, but with kindness. He reminded me that I was not alone, and in that moment, he saved me." The truth was simple, yet it shook like thunder. Keanu bowed his head for a moment, his lips pressed together, his heart heavy with emotion. "She saved me too," he finally said. His voice was calm but filled with meaning. "When I lost so much in my life, when grief became too heavy, Sandra's presence kept me from falling deeper. She may think I saved her, but she has been saving me for years. The air in the room grew heavier as they continued. They spoke of unseen battles, of nights where tears replaced sleep, of days when they thought they could not keep going. But every time, kindness from one to the other lit a small flame in the darkness. That flame kept them alive, kept them moving, and gave them the strength to stand on that stage years later. The 3 words were not a secret of love, they were a truth of survival. When the recording ended, both of them sat in silence. The weight had lifted, but a new fear entered, the world's reaction. Would people understand, or would they twist it into something shallow? Keanu reached out, gently squeezing Sandra's hand. "Whatever they say, we know the truth," he whispered. "And truth does not break." Sandra nodded, tears slipping down her face, but her heart felt lighter than it had in years. The next day, they released the recording. Within minutes, it spread across the world. Millions clicked, millions watched, and millions cried. People did not see stars on a screen. They saw 2 human beings stripped of walls, showing the raw power of kindness and respect. Comments flooded in from strangers saying, "I needed to hear this. You just saved me too," and "These words gave me courage." But with the love came the storm. Headlines twisted their story, critics mocked their emotions, and gossipers tried to create scandals out of honesty. Yet the truth was stronger. Their bond, their humility, and their resilience shone brighter than the noise. People who were hurting, people who felt unseen, clung to their words like a rope pulling them out of darkness. The whisper Sandra had spoken had now become a voice echoing across the world. And as the world reacted, something even more unexpected was about to happen, something that would test them once more and reveal just how powerful 3 words could truly be. The video had been released for only a few days, but its impact was already unimaginable. Millions of people across the world were not just watching it, they were feeling it. The comments section was flooded with stories of people who had once felt broken and now found courage to stand again. Teachers showed the clip to students. Hospitals played it in waiting rooms, and families sat together silently, watching 2 people speak the truth that so many had been afraid to admit. But with every wave of love, another wave of criticism rose. Some media outlets accused them of using pain to stay relevant. Some voices online twisted their words into rumors. Others mocked them, saying kindness was weakness. Sandra read some of those headlines late at night and felt her heart sink. "Maybe we should have stayed quiet," she whispered to Keanu, her eyes filled with doubt. Keanu looked at her, calm as always. "Sandra, look at the faces of those who felt hope again. That is what matters, not the noise." He spoke with quiet strength, but even he knew that storms were hard to ignore. He too had read the harsh words, but he carried them differently. Years of loss had taught him that cruelty was often just pain in disguise. "People who mock are often the ones who hurt the most," he said gently. "Our truth is for those who are ready to listen." Still, the pressure grew heavier. Journalists camped outside their homes, tabloids searched for dirt in their pasts, and television shows debated their every word. It became harder to walk freely without cameras following their every step. Sandra felt trapped. "I didn't want this kind of attention," she said, her voice breaking one evening. "I just wanted to tell the truth." Keanu sat beside her, his hand resting gently over hers. "Truth often brings storms," he whispered. "But storms also wash away what is false. Only what is real survives." His words gave her some peace, but deep inside, she knew the hardest part had not yet come. Then the unexpected test arrived. A well-known magazine released a cover story claiming to reveal the real meaning behind the 3 words. They twisted the narrative, suggesting it was about secret affairs, hidden betrayals, and staged drama. The article spread like wildfire. People who had not even watched the video now believed lies. Sandra's phone rang endlessly with messages from friends asking if it was true. She broke down in tears, unable to handle the cruelty of it. Keanu found her in the corner of the room, her face buried in her hands. He knelt beside her, his voice steady. "Look at me," he said softly. She lifted her eyes, red and tired. The lies do not define us. Our actions do. You whispered the truth. I answered with truth. Nothing can erase that. Sandra wiped her tears slowly. But what if the world never believes us? Keanu shook his head gently. We are not here to make the world believe. We are here to show them kindness, even when they doubt us. Because kindness is not about who believes. It is about who feels. Those words sank deep into Sandra's heart. She realized that the storm was not a punishment, but a test of whether they could hold on to kindness even when the world tried to pull it away. And she decided she would not let the world steal it. The very next day, they surprised everyone. Instead of hiding, they appeared at a charity event for children battling illness. No security wall, no dramatic speeches, no press conferences. They simply walked in quietly, sat with the children, and listened to their stories. They laughed with them, played with them, and offered the same quiet kindness that had once saved each other. Photos of that day spread quickly. People saw Keanu holding a child's hand as if he had known them forever, and Sandra kneeling on the floor to comfort a little girl too shy to speak. Those images cut through the lies like light breaking through clouds. Critics had no words to fight against what was real. And as they drove back from the event, Sandra leaned against the window, watching the world pass by. She whispered to Keanu, "This is what matters. Not the stage, not the cameras, but this." Keanu nodded with his gentle smile. "Yes," he said softly, "because the truth is not what we tell the world. The truth is what we live every day." Yet, even as peace returned for a moment, another twist was waiting. Something from their past, something deeply personal, was about to resurface, forcing them to face memories they thought were buried forever. The charity event had brought them peace for a short while, but storms have a way of finding those who try to walk in light. Just when Sandra and Keanu began to feel calm again, a shadow from their past came knocking. An old interview resurfaced, one from years ago, where Sandra had spoken about her struggles during the darkest time of her life. In that interview, her words hinted at a pain so deep that people now connected it to the whisper she shared with Keanu on stage. Suddenly, headlines screamed, "The secret history behind Sandra's whisper." Journalists began to dig further. Photos of their past meetings, private dinners, and unseen behind-the-scenes moments were thrown online, twisted into wild stories. People claimed to know things they never truly knew, and in the middle of it all, Sandra felt exposed in a way she had never felt before. One night, she sat in her living room, staring at the television replaying her old words. Her hands trembled, her chest felt heavy. "I thought I had buried this," she whispered. "I thought the world would never see it again." Keanu, sitting beside her, leaned closer. "The past does not disappear," he said calmly, "but it does not control who you are now." Sandra's tears slipped down her cheeks. "But they will judge me. They will twist everything. They already have." Keanu reached out, gently holding her hand. "Let them judge," he whispered. "Truth is not a weapon for them. It is a shield for us. You survived that past. You turned pain into strength. Nothing they say can take that away." His words gave her comfort, but the battle was far from over. The next morning, paparazzi surrounded their home. Microphones pushed toward them, questions fired like arrows. Was Keanu the reason you survived? Were the 3 words about a hidden love? What are you hiding from the world? The noise was unbearable. Sandra wanted to run back inside, but Keanu stood firm. He did not raise his voice, he did not argue. He simply looked at them and said, "The only thing you need to know is that kindness saves lives. Remember that." Then he walked Sandra back inside, leaving reporters stunned by his quiet strength. Later that day, they decided to face the storm in their own way. Instead of hiding, they agreed to hold a small public talk, not with reporters, but with ordinary people, teachers, workers, parents, and students, people who lived real lives and carried silent battles of their own. "If we tell them the truth face to face," Sandra said, "maybe they will understand better than headlines ever could." Keanu nodded. "Yes, because truth belongs to people, not tabloids." The event was held in a simple community hall, not a grand stage. Hundreds gathered not for gossip, but for guidance. When Sandra stepped up to speak, her voice trembled at first, but then grew stronger. The world thinks the 3 words I whispered are a mystery. But the truth is simple. I said, "You saved me." And those words carry years of struggle, nights of despair, and the hand of a friend who never let go. The room fell silent, every face locked on her. Keanu then spoke softly. "We are not here to be heroes. We are here to remind you that kindness is not small. It can save lives. It saved ours. It can save yours." His words were not dramatic, but they carried weight. People in the hall began to cry, not out of sadness, but out of recognition. They saw themselves in their story. They felt their own hidden battles being acknowledged at last. After the talk, people lined up to thank them. Some whispered their own 3 words. "You saved me. I need help. Thank you both." Sandra and Keanu listened to each one, holding their hands, offering silent comfort. It was no longer about them. It was about every soul who carried pain quietly. But as they left the hall, Sandra felt something shift inside her. "Keanu," she whispered, "I finally understand. The 3 words were never just mine. They belong to everyone who has ever been saved by kindness." Keanu looked at her with a small, knowing smile. "Yes," he said. "And now the world has begun to see it." Yet even as hope spread, a greater challenge waited ahead. A personal letter from someone neither of them expected would arrive, reopening wounds deeper than before, and testing their resilience one last time. The morning sun filtered gently through the curtains when the letter arrived. It was placed on their doorstep in a plain envelope. No name on the front, just 2 simple words written in careful handwriting. "For you." Keanu found it first, and when he brought it inside, Sandra felt an unusual chill run down her spine. Something about the letter felt heavy, as if it carried more than just paper. She opened it slowly, her hands trembling. Inside were words that made her heart stop. It was from a woman she had once met many years ago during one of her lowest points. The woman had been struggling, lost in darkness, and Sandra had spoken with her quietly backstage at an event, encouraging her to hold on. Sandra had never seen her again. But now, in this letter, the woman explained that those simple words from Sandra had kept her alive. "You told me that kindness can save a soul. You may not remember, but I do. I watched the video, I heard your whisper, and I cried. Because years ago, you saved me too. And now, because of you, I found the courage to save someone else." Sandra's eyes blurred with tears as she read aloud. Keanu placed his hand gently on hers, steadying her shaking fingers. The letter was more than gratitude. It was proof that the truth they had shared was not in vain. Their pain had turned into someone else's hope. Their whisper had echoed further than they could ever imagine. Sandra broke down, sobbing, not from sadness but from overwhelming relief. "Keanu," she whispered, This is why we did it. This is why those words had to be spoken." Keanu nodded, his eyes filled with emotion he rarely showed in public. "Yes," he said softly, "because one whisper can carry across millions of hearts, and if it saves even one life, it is worth everything." In that moment, they both understood something deeper. The storm, the criticism, the gossip, the sleepless nights, it all led to this. Their truth was no longer a private secret. It had become a light guiding strangers through their own darkness. The days that followed brought more letters, more messages, more people reaching out. Some said they finally found courage to speak their truth. Others said they chose to keep going because they no longer felt alone. The whisper had become a movement, not by force, not by fame, but by quiet honesty. Sandra and Keanu did not chase cameras, nor did they make speeches for applause. Instead, they chose to live their message daily. They showed up at hospitals, shelters, schools, always reminding people that kindness is not weakness, it is strength. Their 3 words became more than just a private truth. It became a symbol of resilience for the world. One evening, as they sat together watching the sunset, Sandra turned to Keanu. Her voice was soft, filled with gratitude. "I whispered those words for you but I never thought they would reach millions." Keanu looked at her with that gentle smile that the world had come to know so well. "Sometimes," he said, "the smallest whisper is louder than the loudest shout." Sandra leaned back, finally at peace. For years she had carried the weight of unspoken truth, and now she felt lighter than ever before. The journey had been painful, but it had also been beautiful. It had reminded the world of something it had almost forgotten, that respect, humility, and kindness could heal wounds deeper than fame, deeper than wealth, deeper than fear. The world would never forget the moment. Sandra whispered 3 words and Keanu's reaction shocked millions. But beyond the cameras, beyond the stage, beyond the gossip, the truth remained simple. 2 people had stood together, shared their pain, and turned it into hope for others. And in doing so, they proved that sometimes the quietest voices carry the most powerful messages. Because in the end, 3 words had changed everything.